Meeting Thomas on November 15th, 2024. I met my biological father for the first time. We met at a coffee shop in Cleveland, halfway between Michigan and Maine. I brought Derek for moral support. Thomas brought his wife, Carolyn. When I walked in and saw him sitting at a corner table, I felt an odd sense of recognition. He looked like me, or I looked like him. The same dark eyes, the same high forehead, the same way of holding his shoulders. "Marlena," he said, standing up. "Thank you for coming." We sat down. For a moment, no one knew what to say. Finally, Thomas spoke. "I want you to know that I had no idea about you. If I had known your mother was pregnant, I don't know what I would have done, but I would have done something." "I know," I said. My mother explained everything in her letter. Carolyn reached across the table and took my hand. "This has been a shock for all of us," she said gently. "But Thomas and I have talked about it, and we want you to know that you're welcome in our family." "If that's something you want, was it something I wanted? I had just lost one father. Did I want to try to build a relationship with another? I don't know what I want," I admitted. "This is all very confusing." "Of course it is," Thomas said. "And there's no rush. Take all the time you need, but please know that I would like to get to know you, not as a replacement for the father who raised you, but as another person who cares about you." We talked for 2 hours. Thomas told me about his life, his career, his 3 children, my half-siblings. He showed me pictures of my nieces and nephews. He asked about my life, my work as a pediatric nurse, my marriage. It was surreal. This man was a stranger, but he was also written into every cell of my body. We shared DNA, but we shared nothing else. No memories, no inside jokes, no shared history. "Would you like to meet your siblings?" Carolyn asked as we were preparing to leave. "They know about you. They're very curious." "Maybe," I said. "Someday, but not yet." Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving 2024 was the first holiday I didn't spend with the Hawthorne family in 32 years. My mother invited me, but made it clear that my father didn't want me there. Cameron and Vivian both called to say they would understand if I came, but warned me that the atmosphere would be tense. I decided not to go. Instead, Derek and I went to his parents' house in Toledo. His mother, Susan, hugged me tight and said, "Family isn't about blood. It's about love, and we love you." I cried in her arms for 20 minutes. While I was there, Vivian sent me a photo from the Hawthorne Thanksgiving dinner. The table looked empty with just 4 people, my parents, Cameron, and Vivian. Bethany had apparently decided to spend Thanksgiving with her own family, a fact that clearly irritated Cameron based on Vivian's text. "It's not the same without you," Vivian wrote. "Dad's just sitting there barely talking. Mom's pretending everything is fine. It's awful." I stared at that photo for a long time. Part of me felt vindicated. See, they need me. They miss me. But mostly I just felt sad. Sad for everyone involved. Sad for the family we used to be. The family that no longer existed. Christmas confrontation. I didn't hear from my father for 6 weeks. Not a call, not a text, nothing. It was like I had died, like I had never existed. But on December 20th, 2024, he called me. "Marlena." His voice sounded older, tired. "Can we talk?" "Of course," I said, my heart racing. "Not on the phone. In person. Can you come to the house tomorrow?" "Yes, what time?" 2 o'clock. Just you. "Not Derek." I arrived at 1:55 p.m. the next day. My mother answered the door, her eyes red-rimmed like she'd been crying. "He's in the study," she said quietly. "Marlena, please be patient with him. He's trying." My father was sitting behind his desk when I entered. He looked thinner, older. The past 6 weeks had aged him. "Sit down," he said. I sat in the chair across from him. The same chair where I'd sat dozens of times before when he wanted to discuss something serious. My college choices, my career plans, my wedding budget. He looked at me for a long moment. "I've been thinking," he finally said, "about what happened, about what you told us." "Dad, let me finish." He held up his hand. "I've been thinking about the day you were born, August 4th, 1992. I was there in the delivery room. I cut your umbilical cord. I held you before your mother did. I looked at your tiny face and I thought, this is my daughter. This is the greatest thing I've ever done." And for 32 years, I believed that. I believed you were mine. I believed we shared the same blood, the same genetics, the same essence. Finding out the truth shattered me, Marlena. It made me question everything. If you weren't mine, then who was I? If our entire relationship was based on a lie, then what was real? He paused, rubbing his eyes. But then I realized something. I realized that the love I felt when I held you for the first time, that was real. The pride I felt at your high school graduation, that was real. The joy I felt walking you down the aisle, that was real. Biology didn't make those moments. Biology didn't make me your father. I made me your father by choosing to love you every single day for 32 years. Tears were streaming down my face. Dad, I'm not saying I'm over this, he continued. I'm not saying I've forgiven your mother. Our marriage, that's something we're working on. But you, Marlena, you didn't do anything wrong. You were just trying to find answers about your health. And then you tried to be honest with us. I should have appreciated that instead of punishing you for it. I shouldn't have told everyone at dinner, I said, my voice breaking. I should have talked to you and Mom privately. I handled it all wrong. Maybe, he agreed. But I handled it worse. Much worse. And I'm sorry. He stood up and walked around the desk. For a moment, we just looked at each other. Then he opened his arms, and I fell into them sobbing. I'm sorry, I kept saying. I'm so sorry. I know, he whispered into my hair. I know, I'm sorry too. The new normal, it's been almost a year now since that terrible Sunday dinner. A year of healing, of difficult conversations, of slowly rebuilding what was broken. My father and I are working on our relationship. It's not the same as it was before. It might never be the same. There's a new awareness now, a consciousness of the fragility of family bonds, but we're trying. My mother and father are in marriage counseling. She told him everything, about Thomas, about the affair, about the guilt she's carried for 3 decades. It's been painful for both of them, but my mother says it's also been freeing. No more secrets, no more lies. Cameron has been supportive, though I can tell he struggles with it sometimes. He looks at me differently now, like he's trying to see the parts of me that aren't Hawthorne. Vivian, on the other hand, has been fiercely loyal. You're my sister, she told me. I don't care whose DNA you have. You're my sister. As for Thomas, I've met him 3 more times. We're taking it slow. He's a kind man, thoughtful and intelligent. I can see why my mother was attracted to him all those years ago. I've also met my half-siblings, Rebecca, Jonathan, and Michael. They're welcoming, curious, and a little cautious, much like I am. It's strange having 2 families now. The Hawthorns, who raised me and loved me for 32 years, and the Brennans, who are connected to me by genetics but are essentially strangers. I'm learning to navigate both worlds, to find my place in each. The wedding, the real test, came on October 12th, 2025, Vivian's wedding day. We all knew it would be complicated. Would I be included in the family photos? Would I walk down the aisle as a bridesmaid? Would my father acknowledge me at the reception? Vivian made the decision easy. You're my maid of honor, she told me in January. That's not negotiable. And if Dad has a problem with it, he can deal with it. But my father didn't have a problem with it. In fact, at the rehearsal dinner, he stood up and gave a toast that mentioned all of his children by name, including me. To Cameron, Vivian, and Marlena, he said, raising his glass. My 3 kids. My greatest accomplishments. The word kids instead of children might seem like a small thing, but to me it meant everything. He was claiming me again, not as a biological child, but as his kid, the person he raised, the person he chose to love. At the wedding reception, I danced with both my fathers, Richard and Thomas. It was Derek's idea, and at first I thought it was crazy, but Vivian loved it, and somehow it felt right. Richard held me close as we swayed to an old Frank Sinatra song. I'm proud of you, he said quietly. Not because of what you've accomplished, though that's impressive, but because of how you've handled this impossible situation. You've been graceful and patient and forgiving, more than I deserved. You're my dad, I said simply. That hasn't changed. Later, I danced with Thomas to a Beatles song. It was more awkward. We barely knew each other. But there was something nice about it too. A recognition, an acceptance. Thank you for being open to knowing me, Thomas said. I know this hasn't been easy for you. "Thank you for reaching out," I replied. "For not being angry that I exist." He smiled. That crooked smile that I saw in the mirror every morning. "How could I be angry about you? You're remarkable. Lessons learned. If I could go back to that Sunday in November 2024, would I do anything differently? Yes. 1,000 times yes. I would tell my parents privately, not in front of the entire family. I would have prepared them, given my mother a chance to explain first. I would have handled the revelation with more care, more thought. But would I wish I'd never taken that DNA test? Would I wish I'd never learned the truth? I don't think so. The truth is painful. The truth is complicated. But the truth is also freeing. All those years I felt like something was slightly off in my family. I could never quite articulate what it was, but there was always this sense of not quite fitting. Now I know why. I've learned that family is both simpler and more complicated than I thought. It's not just about blood. It's about choice. It's about showing up. It's about loving someone even when it's hard. My father, Richard, chose to love me for 32 years before he knew the truth. And then, after a period of anger and hurt, he chose to love me again. That's what makes him my dad. But I've also learned that biology matters too. Looking at Thomas, seeing myself reflected in his features, understanding where certain traits came from, that's valuable. That's part of my story. I'm learning to hold both truths at once. Richard is my father because he raised me. Thomas is my father because he gave me life. Both things can be true. Moving forward. These days, I have Sunday dinners with the Hawthorns about once a month instead of every week. It's a healthier boundary for everyone. My mother still cooks, though she's let go of some of her perfectionism. My father is more relaxed, less demanding. Cameron and Vivian come when they can, and we've all learned that missing a dinner isn't a betrayal. It's just life. I also talk to Thomas on the phone every couple of weeks. We're building something. Not a father-daughter relationship exactly, but a friendship. A connection. I visited Maine twice to spend time with the Brennan family, and they've welcomed me with open arms. My half-sister Rebecca and I have discovered we both love hiking, and we're planning a trip to Acadia National Park next summer. Derek has been my rock through all of this. "You're handling 2 families better than most people handle 1, he jokes. But it's not always easy. Sometimes I feel torn between 2 worlds. Sometimes I feel guilty, like I'm betraying Richard by getting close to Thomas, or betraying Thomas by calling Richard Dad. My therapist, Dr. Yolanda Martinez, whom I started seeing in January 2025, has helped me understand that I don't have to choose. You're allowed to love multiple people, she tells me. You're allowed to have complicated feelings. Life isn't either or, it's both and. The baby question in March 2025, Derek and I started talking seriously about having a baby. We'd been married for 5 years, and we both wanted children. But the events of the past year had made everything more complicated. What if the baby doesn't look like me? Derek worried. What if people question if I'm the father, like what happened with you and Richard? Then we'll deal with it, I said. But Derek, we live in 2025, not 1992. DNA tests are normal now. If anyone questions paternity, we can prove it immediately. But his concerns weren't entirely unfounded. The situation with my parents had shown us how fragile trust could be, how easily doubt could poison a relationship. We talked to Dr. Martinez about it. She helped us work through our fears and anxieties. And in the end, we decided that we couldn't let my family's trauma dictate our future. We wanted a baby. We would have a baby. And we would build our own family with honesty and openness from the start. I'm now 4 months pregnant. We're having a girl. When I told my father, Richard, he cried. Happy tears, he assured me. I'm going to be a grandfather, he said, his voice thick with emotion. That little girl is going to be so loved. When I told Thomas, he was quiet for a moment. Then he said, thank you for telling me. I know I'm not the grandfather she'll call Grandpa, but I hope I can be part of her life somehow. You will be, I promised. She'll know all of her family, all of her story. I won't make the same mistakes my mother made. The surprise discovery in August 2025, something unexpected happened. My mother was cleaning out the attic and found a box of old letters from Thomas to her from 1991. She called me, her voice shaking. Marlena, there's something I need to show you. I went to the house that afternoon. My father was at work. My mother and I sat in the living room, and she handed me a shoebox filled with letters, photographs, and a journal. "I thought I'd thrown all of this away," she said, but apparently I couldn't let go completely. I opened the journal first. It was my mother's diary from 1991. I read entries about meeting Thomas, about their conversations, about the way he made her feel seen and heard in ways Richard didn't. "Your father was very focused on his career back then," my mother explained. "We'd been trying to have a baby for 3 years, and every month when I wasn't pregnant, he became more distant, more obsessed with work. I felt invisible." "And Thomas saw you," I said quietly. "Yes." She smiled sadly. "He asked me about my thoughts, my dreams, my opinions on books and art and life. He treated me like I was interesting, like I mattered. I read some of the letters from Thomas. They were beautiful, poetic, thoughtful, full of references to literature and philosophy. He wrote about how much he enjoyed their conversations, how refreshing it was to meet someone who challenged his ideas. But what struck me most was the last letter, dated November 18th, 1991, right before he left Michigan. "Dear Patricia," it read, "my wife has discovered our correspondence, and I must end our friendship immediately. I am deeply sorry for any pain this causes you. What we shared was special, but it was also wrong. I have a family that I love, and I cannot jeopardize that, no matter how much I've enjoyed knowing you. Please forgive me for being weak enough to let this happen, and strong enough to end it. Take care of yourself. You deserve to be happy." "Thomas, did you write back?" I asked my mother. "I tried," she admitted. But he'd already left, and by then I knew I was pregnant. I wrote him one final letter telling him about the baby, but I never sent it. "Do you still have it?" She nodded and pulled out a sealed envelope from the bottom of the box. My name was written on the outside in my mother's handwriting. "For Marlena, when she's ready." With trembling hands, I opened it and read, "Dear Thomas, I am writing to tell you that I'm pregnant. The baby is yours, there's no doubt about that. Richard and I haven't been intimate in months because of the fertility struggles. I've thought about telling you, about reaching out, about asking you to be part of this child's life. But I can't do that. You have a family. You have a life that doesn't include me or this baby. And despite everything, I love my husband. I want to save my marriage, so I'm making a choice. I'm going to tell Richard this baby is his. It's a miracle baby, a blessing after years of trying. He'll never question it because he wants to believe it so badly. I know this is wrong. I know I'm lying to everyone, to Richard, to you, to this baby. But I believe I'm doing the right thing for everyone involved. Richard will have the child he's always wanted. You won't have your marriage destroyed, and this baby will have a stable, loving home with 2 parents who are committed to each other. I'm sorry, Thomas. I'm sorry for all of it, but this is goodbye. The baby is due in August. If it's a girl, I'm going to name her Marlena. It means star of the sea in Latin. She'll be my guiding light through these dark waters. Take care of yourself. Be happy with your family. And please never come looking for us. Patricia." I read that letter 3 times, tears streaming down my face. My mother watched me, her own face wet with tears. "You were going to give me this?" I asked. "When you turned 18, she said. "But then the years passed and you seemed so happy." I kept thinking, why burden her with this? Why ruin her relationship with her father? And so I kept putting it off. And then suddenly you were 32 and you'd taken that DNA test and everything came out anyway. "Mom," I said slowly, "did you know these letters were here? When I told you about the DNA results back in May 2024, she shook her head. "No, I genuinely thought I'd destroyed everything. Finding this box was a shock to me too." We sat in silence for a while. Then my mother said, "I need to ask you something. Do you forgive me for lying all these years, for the choice I made?" It was the question I'd been asking myself for almost a year. Did I forgive her? "I'm trying to," I said honestly. "Some days are easier than others. But Mom, I think I understand now why you did it. You were in an impossible situation, and you made the choice you thought was best." "It was selfish," she said quietly. "I was protecting myself as much as anyone else." "Maybe," I agreed. "But you were also protecting me. And Dad, and your marriage. It wasn't entirely selfish." She reached over and took my hand. "You're going to be a wonderful mother, better than I was. Because you'll be honest with your daughter. You'll tell her the truth, even when it's hard. I learned from the best, I said, and I meant it. My mother had made mistakes, but she'd also given me a good life. She'd loved me fiercely. That counted for something. The dinner redo on November 3rd, 2025, exactly 1 year after the disastrous dinner, my mother proposed something unexpected. "Let's have a Sunday dinner," she said. "All of us. The way we used to." "Mom, I don't think—" "Not just our family," she interrupted. "I want to invite Thomas and Carolyn too. And Rebecca, if she's willing to come. I think it's time we all met. Time we acknowledged that our family is bigger than we thought." I was stunned. "Have you talked to Dad about this?" "Yes. It was his idea, actually. My father, Richard, had suggested inviting Thomas to Sunday dinner. I couldn't believe it, but he had. When I called him to confirm, he said, "Marlena, I've spent a year being angry at Thomas Brennan for something that happened 32 years ago. Something he didn't even know about. That's ridiculous. He's your biological father. He's part of your life. And if I want to be part of your life, and my granddaughter's life, I need to accept that. Dad, you don't have to do this." "Yes, I do," he said firmly. "Not for him. For you, and for me. I need to stop seeing Thomas as a threat, and start seeing him as just another person who cares about you." So on November 3rd, 2025, we had the most surreal Sunday dinner of my life. The guest list included Richard and Patricia, my parents, Cameron and Bethany Vivian and Marcus, now married, Derek and me, Thomas and Carolyn Rebecca, my half-sister. We gathered at my parents' house at 6 p.m., exactly 1 year after I'd been disowned in that same dining room. The atmosphere was tense at first. Thomas and Richard shook hands stiffly. Carolyn and Patricia exchanged polite smiles that didn't reach their eyes. But then my mother served the appetizers, and Cameron made a joke about the last time we'd all tried to have a family dinner. And slowly, incredibly, people started to relax. Thomas and Richard ended up talking about their shared love of golf. Carolyn and Patricia discovered they both volunteered at their local libraries. Rebecca and Vivienne bonded over their experiences as younger siblings. At one point, I looked around the table and felt overwhelmed with emotion. A year ago, I thought my family was destroyed. I thought I'd lost everything that mattered. But here we all were. Broken, complicated, imperfect, but together. After dinner, my father stood up to make a toast. The room went quiet. "A year ago," he began, "I said some things in this room that I deeply regret. I told my daughter she wasn't part of this family anymore. I let anger and hurt and pride get in the way of love." He looked at me, his eyes wet. "Marlena, I was wrong. You've always been part of this family, and you always will be. Blood doesn't make a family. Love does, choice does, showing up does. And you've shown up, even when I pushed you away. Thank you for giving me a second chance." He turned to Thomas. "And Thomas, thank you for reaching out to Marlena. Thank you for being willing to be part of her life without trying to replace me. That takes grace and generosity, and I appreciate it." Thomas raised his glass. "Richard, thank you for raising an extraordinary woman. Whatever genes I contributed, you gave her everything that matters. Her kindness, her strength, her integrity. I'm grateful to you." We all raised our glasses. To family, to forgiveness, to second chances. The birth on April 15th, 2026, my daughter was born. We named her Eleanor Grace Hawthorne. Richard was in the waiting room with Derek's parents when Eleanor arrived. When the nurse brought him back to meet his granddaughter, he cried. Big, gasping sobs that shook his whole body. "She's perfect," he kept saying. "She's absolutely perfect." Thomas and Carolyn visited the next day. Thomas held Eleanor carefully, reverently, like she was made of glass. "Hello, little one," he whispered. I'm Thomas. I'm part of your story, just like everyone else who loves your mama." Eleanor has Richard's eyes. Or rather, the eyes I inherited from him through 32 years of believing we shared genetics. She has Thomas's nose, she has Derek's chin, and she has my smile. She is a perfect blend of all of us. A reminder that family isn't simple. It's not a straight line from parent to child. It's a web of connections, biology, and choice, and love, all tangled together. Reflections. It's now June 2026, and I'm writing this story down because I want Eleanor to know the truth someday. Not the sanitized version. Not the easy version, but the real, messy, complicated truth. I want her to know that her grandfather, the man she'll call Grandpa Richard, chose to love me even when he discovered I wasn't biologically his. That's a love worth celebrating. I want her to know that her other grandfather, Thomas, reached out to me even though it would have been easier not to. That took courage. I want her to know that her grandmother Patricia made a terrible mistake out of love and fear and desperation, and that she spent 3 decades trying to make up for it. I want Eleanor to know that families break, but they can also heal. The question I get asked most often is, do you wish you'd never taken that DNA test? My answer is complicated. I wish the revelation hadn't been so painful. I wish I'd handled it better. I wish my father hadn't felt so betrayed. But no, I don't wish I'd never learned the truth, because the truth, as painful as it was, led to something beautiful. It led to honesty. It led to expanded love. It led to a larger understanding of what family means. I lost my father for 6 weeks, but I gained a biological father, 3 half-siblings, and a deeper, more authentic relationship with everyone in my life. And I learned something important. Real love survives the truth. Real love bends but doesn't break. Real love says, I'm angry, I'm hurt, but I'm not leaving. Sunday dinners. Now these days, Sunday dinners are different. We rotate houses, sometimes at Richard and Patricia's, sometimes at Thomas and Carolyn's, sometimes at our house. The conversations are richer. People say what they mean. My mother no longer pretends everything is perfect. My father admits when he's hurt instead of lashing out. Cameron talks about his marital problems instead of hiding behind his perfect facade. Vivian shares her struggles with anxiety. We're more honest, more real, more human. And weirdly, we're closer than we've ever been. Last Sunday, I was in my mother's kitchen helping her prepare dinner while Eleanor napped in a playpen nearby. My mother was chopping vegetables and I was stirring a pot on the stove. Do you remember that night? She asked quietly. The night your father disowned you? Of course, I said. I'll never forget it. I was so terrified, she admitted. I thought he was going to leave me. I thought I'd lost you both. I thought my lies had destroyed everything. But they didn't, I said. We're still here. She smiled, tears in her eyes. We are, against all odds. My father walked into the kitchen at that moment, carrying Eleanor, who had woken up from her nap. Someone wants her mama, he said, handing her to me. I took my daughter and looked around the kitchen, at my mother, at my father, at the dinner we were preparing together. This was my family. Complicated, imperfect, scarred by secrets and healed by honesty. What are you smiling about? My father asked. This, I said. All of this. I'm just grateful. He put his arm around me, pulling me close. So am I, sweetheart. So am I. The letter to Eleanor I'm writing this final section as a letter to my daughter, to be read when she's old enough to understand. Dear Eleanor, by the time you read this, you'll probably know bits and pieces of this story. You'll know that Grandpa Richard isn't my biological father. You'll know about Thomas, about the DNA test, about the family drama that happened before you were born. But I want you to know the whole story, because your family history is complicated, and you deserve to understand it fully. You're going to grow up with 2 grandfathers who love you. That's a gift. Grandpa Richard will teach you to be brave and strong. Thomas will teach you to be curious and thoughtful. Both of them will teach you about love. Not the easy, simple love, but the hard, complicated, choose to stay love. You're going to grow up in a family that's been broken and repaired. That's also a gift. You'll learn that mistakes don't have to be fatal. That anger doesn't have to be permanent. That love, real love, is stronger than secrets. Here's what I want you to remember. Family is not just about who gave birth to you or who shares your DNA. Family is about who shows up, who stays, who chooses to love you even when it's difficult. Honesty is hard, but it's worth it. Secrets rot from the inside. Truth, even painful truth, can heal. Forgiveness is a process, not a moment. It takes time. It takes work. It takes choosing, over and over again, to let go of hurt and anger. You are loved by so many people. People who are connected to you in different ways, but who all want the best for you. That's not confusing. That's beautiful. When you make mistakes, and you will make mistakes, remember that people can change. People can grow. People can say, "I'm sorry," and mean it. Your Grandpa Richard taught me that. When you discover uncomfortable truths, and you will discover uncomfortable truths, remember that truth doesn't erase love. Your Grandma Patricia taught me that. When you meet people who are connected to you in unexpected ways, and you might, in this age of DNA tests and global connectivity, remember that connection is a gift, not a threat. Thomas taught me that. And when life gets complicated, and it will get complicated, remember that you don't have to figure everything out alone. Lean on the people who love you. Ask for help. Be vulnerable. Your dad, Derek, taught me that. You are Eleanor Grace Hawthorne. Grace is your middle name because grace, unearned, undeserved kindness and forgiveness, is what saved our family. Remember that when you need to give grace to others, and remember that when you need to give grace to yourself, I love you more than I can express in words. You are my miracle, my joy, my second chance to do family right. Love always. Mama Epilogue, 5 years later. It's November 2030 now. Eleanor is 4.5 years old. She calls Richard Grandpa and Thomas Papa Thomas. She doesn't find this confusing at all. To her, it's just how families work. We just had our annual November 3rd dinner, a tradition we started after that first anniversary dinner in 2025. Every year, we gather to remember the night that almost destroyed us and celebrate the family we've become. This year, Eleanor helped set the table. She put name cards at each seat, carefully writing everyone's names in her crooked 4-year-old handwriting. When she got to my seat, she paused. "Mama," she asked, "what should I write for you? Just Marlena or Marlena Hawthorne? Or do you have another name too, like Papa Thomas's last name?" It was a simple question, but it held so much weight. Who was I? A Hawthorne? A Brennan? Both? Neither? Just write Marlena, I told her. That's who I am. Because that's what I've finally realized, after 6 years of struggling with this question. I'm not defined by one last name or one father or one family. I'm Marlena. I'm a daughter and a sister and a wife and a mother. I'm a nurse and a friend and a complicated person with a complicated story. I'm a child of secrets and a champion of truth. I'm proof that families can break and heal. I'm evidence that love is stronger than biology, but also that biology matters. I'm all of it. The whole messy, beautiful, complicated thing. At dinner that night, as I looked around the table at all the people who loved me, Richard and Patricia, Thomas and Carolyn, Cameron and Vivian, Derek and Eleanor, and all the additions to our family over the years, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. Not because everything was perfect. Not because all the hurt had disappeared, but because we were all there, together, choosing to be a family. Richard caught my eye and smiled. Thomas raised his glass in a small toast. My mother reached over and squeezed my hand. Eleanor climbed into my lap, chattering about her day at preschool. This was my family, all of it, every complicated piece. And I wouldn't change a thing.